the Samaritans were kind of persona non grata to many of the Jews. I think Jesus made it clear throughout his ministry, which was also clear sorry. That he came to give his life.
Amen. Amen.
For everyone. And that's abundantly clear in this parable. The Pharisee with whom he came there had prepared in the parable, this man had prepared a great banquet for many guests. The custom in those days was, if you prepared a banquet of this kind, that you sent out an invitation in advance to see who thought they might be able to come. Looking back to yesterday, and the tea that we had, lots of preparation, and a good part of that preparation has to do with, are we feeding 5 or 30 or 50 or 100? You count. You want to know. If you plan for 30 and 20 come, you still had a plan, and you probably have some food left over. It's probably not a good idea usually if you plan for 30 and 40 come. Now yesterday we actually would have been okay, because the plan was probably if 40 people showed up, we actually did have enough food. But we had food set out for 30, and we had exactly 30 people. That's actually a great plan if you can do it that well. And the people who planned it actually did a very good job that way. But you need to know how much food to prepare. You can't plan a big banquet like this guy had. We might call it a party nowadays. You can't plan this and not know how much hamburger to buy. I mean, I'm just, you can't plan this and not know. Nowadays, you would have to know how many text messages you have to send out so that you can RSVP by text message. Then he sent his servant out and invited people, and they said yes, and maybe he wrote down a list of who's coming, and he came back and talked to the chef, and he probably did some of the preparations. But the custom was to invite in advance, and then when the preparations had been made and everything was ready, I don't know how this happened. Today, again, they'd send out an email or a text message and say, tomorrow, 5 o'clock, everything's ready. We're planning on you being here. And this was in person. So the servant is out there talking to people, and he's planning on them coming, and suddenly person after person comes up with an excuse, a reason why they're not going to be there. So the invited guests begin to make excuses. The first one says, I just bought a field and I need to go look at it. Well, then and now, this was extremely unlikely to happen, okay? If you buy real estate, you probably go look at it before you stick the money in somebody's hand and say, okay, I'm buying it. You buy a house, you know what? You usually go look at the house first. I bought my house about 1.5 years ago. We lived in it for 4 years. My landlord, while I was renting, he said he wouldn't sell it to me until I lived in it for 1 year, because it's in Lake LA, way out in the desert. We'd been living in town. He wanted to make sure that we were actually going to be happy in this house, because he kind of liked his house and wanted to sell it to somebody that was also going to like the house. We love it, by the way. But, you would not buy a piece of real estate and, that sounds okay, and you've never gone and looked at it, walked around. If you buy land, you usually go walk around it. Is this hilly? Does it have trees on it? Is it a piece of desert? What am I going to use it for? Is this going to be agricultural? I'm going to put sheep out there. You know what? It needs to have some grass on it, or the sheep aren't going to be really happy. So, long story short is, this sounds like an excuse, but it was not only a bad excuse. Within their culture, this would have been pretty much an insult. Yeah. I'm making up a reason not to go to your big banquet that I said I would go to, but I'm not only not coming, but I'm making up a reason. we do this sometimes nowadays. I can't give a specific example, but sometimes we just don't want to do something, you know, and you know, any reason might be, we probably make up a reason, we hope it sounds good, but if the person we make that excuse to actually kind of reads between the lines, maybe they know we just don't want to show up. Maybe they know we just have something that's more important right now than they are. Joke I used to tell, two farmers, one of them was milking his cow and the other farmer shows up and says, I need to borrow your rope. And the farmer that's milking the cow says, no, can't do that right now. Using my rope to tie up my milk. And the first farmer looks at him and says, can't use a rope to tie up your milk? And the farmer keeps milking his cow and he says, well, you know what? If a guy doesn't want to do something, ain't one reason about as good as another. So, yeah, I'm not using my rope to tie up my milk, but go away either way. Second guest, he bought 5 yoke of oxen. If I know what a yoke of oxen is, I think that's 2 of them. So I'm pretty sure this guy bought 10 oxen. Okay, and he's never tried them out. Okay, again, I did a little homework here. Back in those days, you didn't buy oxen to plow your field unless you did one of 2 things. You either went to the farmer who owned the oxen in the first place, and there'd be a field there that needed to be plowed, and he'd let you actually get behind these oxen and walk along and see if you liked how these oxen work together and plow the field. You try them out, okay? This was before any money changed hands. This was before you walked off with these oxen and the yoke and everything. Okay, but he's bought 5 of them. You know what? Okay, this occurred to me. You know, I'm a farmer nowadays, and I'm a big enough farmer. I need 5 John Deeres, all right? 5 John Deeres. And right, I'm going to have them delivered to my farm, dropped off. They're brand new. All my tractors I have right now, they're 10 years old, okay? So, new technology, probably bigger tractor, you know, and I've never been in the cab of one of them, and I'm going to have them dropped off, and I'm going to shuck out. I don't know how much a tractor is nowadays. Might be 100,000 a piece. Back then, a yoke of oxen, that was an investment. This is business, folks. You don't handle business this way. Again, bad excuse, and the bottom line is, again, it was an insult to the guy that's offering the banquet and the guy that invited you. I think one of the lessons here is, don't make excuses for stuff like this. Just say no. Yeah. There's more respect here in my mind. If you really just don't want to come, don't insult the guy. Just say no. Be honest. In my mind, it's always better to just be honest, in other words. Sometimes we try to make excuses for what amounts to bad behavior, and I think the world around us, in a lot of ways, they know it's bad behavior. We're not keeping secrets. We're not pulling the wool over anybody's eyes, so to speak. It's just bad behavior. We could have done better. We could have just, you know, ask if you can, you know, take a rain check. You know, I just can't make it right now, but tell him I'm sorry. Yeah. And the third guy, this is kind of the fun one. He just got married. He says, I just got married, so I can't come. It doesn't really explain that. You know, you can put all kinds of spin on that. You can say, well, some people might say, well, I just got married, my wife won't let me go. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Lots of ladies here. I think I'm on target here. This is a big banquet. This is a big deal. You get to fix up for this. You get to show up for this. You get to be the lady with your man, and you just got this guy. You want to show him off? He ought to want to show you off. This is not a reason to not come to this guy. This is the best possible reason I know of. I just got married, and I'm getting invited to stuff like this. Yeah. Why would you not go? Because you just got married. Not try to use this event in your life as the reason why you're not gonna show up at this big deal where there'll be lots of people there, some of them important, and they get to see you and you can introduce your new wife. This was the best possible reason to actually show up, I think. And so it was, which makes it the worst possible reason to give. I just got married, so this is beyond belief almost to me, that this guy says, please excuse me. And for the third time, insulting. Yeah. You didn't just make an excuse. This is an insult to the guy that invited you, and in our terms or theirs. You just almost wouldn't have said this unless the point was to insult him. Maybe not, but it's close in these three cases. And because this was a big banquet, Jesus didn't go into how many people actually came, but basically all the people who were invited to the originally basically sounds like they ended up not coming. He gave these three specific excuses, but I guess a lot of other people made excuses and weren't going to come. Okay, so now he's got back to yesterday. What do you do if nobody is showing up that was invited? Now, I don't think you could do it here, so I'm not going to worry that illustration too far, but because you probably can't go grab 30 people off the street, ladies and their daughters, and say, hey, you, we got food over here, and we got a little party, and you're welcome, because that probably wouldn't work, so I won't belabor that point. But anyway, the servant comes back, and the rejections made the master of the house angry. Okay. There's a lesson here, I think. He didn't get angry and go after the people who had turned him down and rejected his invitation. And there's a lesson here. I'm not going to spiritualize the parable too far, but this parable is about the Jews and the Gentiles, the saved and the unsaved. There's different ways to apply it, and I'm not going to try to go every possible direction with this parable. But what the master did was, because he got rejected, and Jesus was talking to Jews, so there was a lesson here that the Jews, their Messiah had come. And their Messiah told them he was their Messiah, and the religious leaders especially had rejected him as their Messiah. And Jesus went, he's in a sense also explaining, this is why you see me with, even among the Jews, the sinners and the tax collectors and the prostitutes, because they accept me, they listen to me, they come, they share what I want to share, and I do want to share with my people. Jesus actually didn't go to the Gentiles as such, but he made the gospel open to them, and this was a precursor of sorts to saying, look, you're rejecting the gospel. The gospel's not going to just go away, folks. The gospel is going to get preached. Somebody's going to come to this banquet. Somebody's going to come share. Somebody's going to get the benefit of this. And so his anger, he didn't take his anger out, in other words, on the people that rejected him. Now, later on, the last verse here, kind of interesting to me. He says, none of those people are going to get to taste my supper. Amen. They rejected me, but now I'm rejecting them. Right. They don't get to come now. They don't get to change their mind because I've filled my house up. They've had their chance. A little bit scary, folks, to me, that some opportunities in life are not going to be there forever. Right. God can open a door, and you need to walk when you can walk. Amen. Because the message is going to keep going out. Amen. And the people are going to keep being invited. And your spot, there was a spot at that feast for this person. He'd been invited. He got invited again. He got told, it's ready. Come. Enjoy. Share. Yeah. Be with these other people. And the answer was no from this side, but then the answer was no from the other side. You said no, now you can't come. A little scary, folks, that this is how God works in some ways in our lives. There might be an opportunity that's there, and it might not come back.
Amen.
Important life events, back to, I bought a field, I bought yoke of oxen, I got married.